Thanks very much, everyone. Yeah, I'm a user experience designer. I am going to talk about the Internet of Things. When I first wrote that talk intro about saying Internet of Things, that was kind of like a bit of a weird phrase. We kind of got used to it now over the past year, so I'm a bit more comfortable about saying Internet of Things. That was kind of like a bit of a weird phrase. We kind of got used to it now over the past year, so I'm a bit more comfortable with saying Internet of Things. It's going to take me a little while to get round to talking about the Internet of Things, and that will kind of, the talk kind of flows through into that, and it's my thinking about how our roles have expanded, and then how the Internet of Things is kind of accelerating that. That's kind of where I'm heading. I'm going to tell some stories. I spend a lot of time building empathy with users by telling stories. So I'm going to tell some stories. And then I'm going to try and pull some things out at the end. Now, the first story is absolutely nothing to do with technology or Internet of Things whatsoever. But it is a story about a user experience. So I'm going to tell that story. Last July, and this was kind of where I started on the journey to this talk, last July was my daughter's 5th birthday, and she wanted to get a swing in the garden. Now, this picture is my daughter on the swing. So it's a bit of a spoiler to the end of the story. But the story gets quite tense, so I think the fact that you know that the swing's going to happen at the end and she's loving it, hopefully you'll be able to relax through the tense moments of the story. So it's 2014. Where do you go to buy a swing? Obviously, you're going to look on the internet. So that's what I did. I had a look around, and this is the kind of the middle-class swing of choice. This is the plum single seat, if you're interested. It's lovely wood finish. It looks great in our garden. I mean, that's not hard because our garden's horrific, to be quite honest. But it's a lovely swing. So I picked that out. Obviously, I read a couple of reviews. I mean, you don't buy anything on the internet without buying a couple of reviews. And everything seemed great. There were no alarm bells ringing. Now, why you'd have alarm bells ringing buying a swing, that might become clear. So I went ahead and ordered one, and the swing arrived very quickly, within a few days. Some lovely chaps brought it straight into my house, and I then moved it up into the shed to kind of hide it away. And then we started thinking, as my daughter's birthday approached, how are we going to present the swing to my daughter? It's kind of sat packaged in the shed at the moment. Is it possible that we could erect the swing overnight and then kind of present it with a massive ta-da on the morning of her birthday? I mean, that would be amazing. Start fling open the curtains. So wasn't sure how that was possible, so we had a look at the instructions. I cracked open the box, and these are the instructions. Hopefully you can read that. It basically says assembly requires 2 adults, approximately 1 hour assembly time. So I was thinking, oh, this is great. This is really encouraging. My wife and I can put the swing up after my daughter's gone to bed, and we can have this massive reveal. Also, on the next page of the instructions was really good. It listed out the tools we were going to need, so this is perfect. I could see that I had most of them. I needed a socket set. I don't have a socket set, but I knew I could borrow one. So it's been really nicely thought out. I knew how long it was going to take and what it was going to need. Unfortunately, the night before my daughter's birthday, the weather scuppered the plan. There was no way we were going to be putting a swing up on that evening. So I had to do a bit of late-night Photoshop. This is probably the finest piece of Photoshop work I've ever done. It's a slightly different version of the plum single suite, but it's my daughter on it. She's happy. And the photo made her happy, and it actually gave us all something to kind of focus on. It's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build this swing. So the next weekend, we set to with putting together the swing. And we followed the pictorial IKEA instructions, and they're really nicely to step through. And I think probably after a little bit more than an hour, I think it was probably more like an hour and a half, we had a swing. But it was lying down on the ground, and I had kind of this uneasy feeling what was going on. And I got to the last page of the instructions, and there's this picture here. Again, it's a bit tricky to see. But what this picture is telling us, is that we needed now to dig 4 15 by 15 by 30 centimeter holes in the ground. We're going to set some pins into those holes using concrete. And then we're going to attach the swing to those pins. So hang on a sec. We've got to dig some holes. We need some concrete. We're going to have to dig the holes in the right place. We've got to set the pins at the right angle in concrete. Nobody ever mentioned we were going to need a spade amongst the tools. Nobody mentioned we were going to need concrete. Nobody mentioned that we were going to need, a day for the concrete to set. It's two people assemble in 1 hour with these tools. And I could sort of see the horror of the engineering, sort of civil engineering challenge that was in front of us as I went and fetched my spade. In the end, my wife, who's much smarter than I am, architected the kind of hole-digging, concrete setting stuff, and we roped in some extra labor as well, which was great. It was really hard. We made some mistakes. We started by digging the holes slightly in the wrong place, so we had to move them, and we then had to shutter the concrete. I learned what that was. It's like putting some bits of wood to stop the concrete moving around. We shuttered the concrete. We used a piece of wood, which we really carefully cut to the right width and height to attach to the pins before we set the concrete. Poured postcrete in. Postcrete's a special type of concrete that you use to do posts and pins for swings, apparently. There we go. We had them set. And in the end, the left to right distance of the pins, the holes in the ground, was spot on. The front to back distance was not quite right. And those pins are set in concrete. They're not going anywhere without one of those. I don't know what the name of one of those is. They're not going anywhere without that. Again, the bottom picture is the engineering solution, which my wife architected. It's kind of like Meccano. It's a bit better than Meccano. And so we had the swing. My daughter had the swing. We were delighted. So why am I telling this ridiculous story about a swing? And it's a user experience half thought through. So the user experience of finding and purchasing and installing our swing had kind of been thought through beautifully by the team that had designed this thing, all the way up to the point when we got to the whole hole-digging, pin-setting in concrete thing. And we were kind of scuppered by that. And I don't really understand what had happened to the people designing this swing. It seems unlikely that they'd sort of sat around, designed this beautiful set of instructions, and then they sort of thought, well, the people doing this, they're going to be fine. They know about concrete and pins and stuff. That's going to be good. I kind of get the feeling maybe they were under some pressure. They'd spent a long time building this beautiful set of instructions, and then they kind of got to this last part and realized how difficult it was. They were under pressure from the big cheeses to get this thing out the door. So they just drew this picture, and boom, that was it, away you go. And that left me with this really difficult situation. So it's a story about a user experience that's half thought through. And I'm going to tell some more stories now, which thankfully are taking us back into a kind of technical territory. And there's some user experience that doesn't go swimmingly. So you've purchased some internet-connected smoke detectors. And they promise a beautiful user experience. Now, you're not totally sure that you've got an issue with the user experience of your current smoke detectors. You know, they beep when there's some smoke, and they beep when there's a battery problem, and that's fine. But you've got money to burn, so you figure that you should probably do it in a safe way. You're going to buy these amazing smoke detectors. And the website is beautiful. The ordering experience is flawless. And the process of unboxing these things, it feels like a leisure activity, and the whole family gets involved. It's super exciting. And then you notice that the thing is square. Your current smoke detectors are round. So you're going to have to make sure you fit this thing square against the wall so it looks okay. That's a bit of a pain, and you only have to kind of drill several sets of holes in your ceiling before you actually get it spot on. But that's fine. You know, it's all part of the experience. Getting the thing connected to your Wi-Fi takes a little bit of to and fro, and gradually you're getting the various detectors talking to each other. It's taken you pretty much all day, and the family have gone now. They've gone swimming. They've kind of lost interest. Still, you keep thinking the experience of waving at this thing to silence it when you're grilling sausages, that's got to be worth it, right? So everything's fine. A few nights later, you're woken by an alarm. In fact, your whole family is woken by all of the alarms. So the interconnectedness of these things is working brilliantly. That's great. The devices, there's an alarm, and the devices are also very calmly telling you that there's smoke in the living room. That's part of the experience, is this calm voice. It's lovely. So you head down in your pajamas to check it out, and there's no smoke in the living room. So you do the thing to wave your arms. It's like, yeah, this is what I wanted. I'm waving at it. And it tells you, again, very calmly that it can't be silenced. Your children, well, your infant child is bawling their head off. They're terrified. And obviously your partner, who, I mean, they were never totally sure about the whole user experience smoke detector thing. They're basically furious now. So you yank the batteries out, and you go back to sleep without any smoke protection. So next day you call customer support. And you've never had to call customer support for smoke detectors before, so that's an interesting experience. They're really nice, they're super helpful, and they'll tell you that they're going to get a replacement unit for the living room your way straight away. And while you're at it, you also take a look at a few independent forums and, which exist for your smoke detector. And you've never Googled for stuff about smoke detectors before, so that's kind of an interesting experience. And you end up reading all sorts of horror stories about false alarms, like the one that you've experienced. Lots of people have had those. There's also issues with the kind of hand-waving to silence it thing. It turns out that somebody fleeing a fire might actually do that, might be waving their arms, and that silencing it is not as brilliant an idea as you might suggest. So you're left feeling slightly uneasy, and that uneasy is a word that keeps cropping up in these stories. You're left feeling a bit uneasy about your expensive internet-connected smoke detectors. So this story is starting to feel a bit dated now. This is a DVR, which probably is slowly disappearing from our houses. So you have been watching a 6-part crime drama for a few weeks now. It's getting really exciting, and you're proper gripped by it. And then suddenly your DVR, which you're watching this thing on, suddenly loses its tuning. And you can't watch any channels. So you set about retuning the device. No joy, you're not getting anywhere. And you suddenly realize with horror, and you're kind of gripped with this, your crime drama series, you're recording this crime drama series, and everything else goes out of your mind. So you leap on and check the recorded programs. You're so gripped. And sure enough, episodes 5 and 6 of your series are AWOL. It's like, oh my God, the end of the series. So you quickly leap onto iPlayer, and you discover you can watch episode 6. You can't watch episode 5 anymore because it's gone past the number of days that you can watch things on iPlayer. So you're gutted, and you're going to have to head into torrents to get those programs, and that's fine. You can deal with it. You'll feel a little bit guilty. It's OK. But still, you've got a DVR that's a brick. Now, you sent out a tweet, a lazy web tweet, see if you can get any help, and nobody's replied. So you're going to have to do a bit of Googling for yourself, and you do that. There's an awful lot of results, and it takes you about an hour to wade through those results. There's lots of problems with people who just don't understand the UI on this thing. There's quite kind of basic problems with people and aerials and the aerial power supply, that kind of thing. And there's a few kind of proper issues that people have, but none of them match the problem that you've got with the retuning. So you're about to just kind of reluctantly consider contacting customer support. It's kind of your last port of call. You don't really want to have to do this. You know it's going to be a nightmare because you're going to have to wade through a kind of series of phone questions about very basic diagnostic stuff that you've been through this. It's plugged in, the aerial's there, that kind of thing. But just before you do that, you spot in your Google results, buried away in the News tab of your Google results, a BBC News report, which is about your problem. So there's actually an acknowledged issue with your particular DVR, and something to do with corrupted electronic program guide data. And thankfully, there's an easy fix on the bottom of this BBC News story. And it's this. So it says, affected users carry out the following steps: turn the machine on and eject any disks. Press the stop button on the recorder. While holding it down, press and release the on standby button, and then release the stop button as well. This resets the machine, deleting the corrupted data. Owners should then follow the on-screen instructions to retune the machine, selecting Digital Guide rather than Guide Plus when given the choice. I mean, that sounds really straightforward, doesn't it? I noticed this morning for the first time, there's a typo. It says, this resents the machine, deleting the corrupted data. That's brilliant. It's a nice touch. Quite why you found this information on a news story, rather than, say, on a site for your product, the product you've paid money for, or even maybe this information finding you. You own this product, so why hasn't this information found you? That's kind of a source of mild frustration. And you end up thinking wistfully back to the days of your VCR, VHS. Occasionally your VCR would lose its tuning from time to time, but you'd just borrow a mate's tape and watch it, and then you'd give it back, and that was that. So you can't quite decide if things are better now or not. This This is a Lego person, we don't know if it's a man or a woman, in a washing machine, in some distress, by the way. And I think the chap running away might be a stormtrooper, but I'm not too sure about that. So it's early 2016. A friend gives you a call. A few months ago, they moved into a cutting-edge new eco house in a kind of smart development of eco houses. And the house came with a wide array of smart home internet-connected lighting, heating, and white goods, appliances. And your friend tells you they can control everything with a touch screen, which came with the house, and it's working really well. But they're a bit confused because they thought that the Internet of Things meant they should be able to control stuff with their iPhone. They should be able to switch on their washing machine when they're out and about, wherever they are. So you visit your friend, you pop round, you have a cup of tea to take a look. The touch screen has a dock set into the wall to charge in the hallway, and it looks really nice. It's really, really fancy. You have a bit of a play with this thing, and you conclude that it's kind of a lockdown proprietary thing. It's probably based on an older version of Android. There's a few clues in the UI. And you kind of wonder how and if it updates when there are security patches. I'm not sure, maybe it doesn't. So you ask your friend who they're supposed to call to get support. And they don't know. All they had to do when they moved in was install their router, sort out their broadband, and then supply their Wi-Fi password to the touchscreen. And everything's kind of worked really well since. They haven't had any problems at all. They have got some documentation which the developer left. There's a big pile of documentation for all the bits and pieces in the house. And it's actually a folder of like printed out manuals and stuff. So they grab that, and you have a bit of a wade through. There's all sorts of different styles of documentation in there. There's warranties and things like that. There's a few bits and pieces about some of these interfaces, but there's nothing there that specifically talks about this integrated system. There's nothing particularly about the touchscreen and stuff. So you decide to call the housing developer, and they're pretty busy building more houses and selling them. So they're not actually that keen to help. But they do give you the phone number of the developer who developed the integrated system, and that turns out to be an agency. And through the magic of storytelling, I can tell you that agency, they mostly do native mobile phone apps. But recently, they started taking on some kind of Internet of Things projects, connected projects, because the demand has come through from clients, and just because it's quite cool, it's quite good fun to play around with. So the developer you're chatting to is really helpful, really nice. You ask them if they're supporting the system that they've built that's in this house, and they tell you they're not. It's not something that the housing developer wanted to take on. You ask if there are APIs for the various attached devices and the kind of internet things, and the agency, the developer there, explains there are, but there's no kind of one single list for the various installations at that housing development. He can kind of give you a list of references, and you can go off and look through it and work through that. So you're kind of coming around to realize this isn't really the agency's problem, it's not the developer's problem, but neither is it really the housing developer's problem. And whilst the various appliances and systems are working, everything's going to be fine. But when it comes to kind of replacing or repairing appliances, obviously appliances only have a limited lifespan. After a few years, something's going to happen. The homeowner and anyone they employ, so domestic appliance engineers, plumbers, electricians, they're going to have no idea about this system that's been installed in this thing. They have no idea about the integration, no idea about these interfaces. They don't know how to integrate something with it. And it's unclear who's responsible, if anyone at all, for the firmware on the interfaces and if that needs updating for security or other reasons. So you've kind of reached the end of your journey, really. You tell your friend that there's no particular easy answer of wanting to control his washing machine from his iPhone. You could probably implement something for him. You could probably pay someone. You're not actually that keen. And you're kind of left with, again, an uneasy feeling that you might get dragged back into this if something goes wrong with some of his appliances. And you don't even want to think about the other people on the housing estate and their kind of tech-savvy friends and relatives who are going to get a call at sort of 9 o'clock at night when the internet washing machine starts leaking. So that's that one. This is the last story now. So you're the facilities manager for a district council, and you're in the middle of moving half of the council staff into a brand new custom-built building. It's a very fancy building. And it's got, it comes with an integrated building information management system, BIS. It sounds super cool. one of the things that it aims to do is reduce energy usage in this building. And it tries to do that by looking at the energy uses of things like heating, plumbing, lighting, various other facilities within that building. And it's doing this kind of an experimental new aspect to that that's being tried out here. And they're going to try and track, analyze, and predict the movements of employees around the building in order to help with this. To kind of work out who's moving where, predict their movements, and kind of adjust the energy uses of the various things. Now, councils love leading the way in things like this, energy-saving initiatives. They can kind of shout about them, and they look great, and they can shout about them to the businesses in their region, that kind of thing. But on the flip side, they don't have huge budgets. So this system has been installed on a very tight budget. So that's something to bear in mind. It's kind of part of the commissioning of a whole custom building. The system uses a network of beacons around the building, and it uses an iPhone or an Android app. Apparently the Windows app is coming soon, which employees have to launch as they pass through the turnstiles in the lobby. Now, council employees have a bit of a reputation for being kind of liberals and lefties. So perhaps it's not all that surprising that they don't take too well to the idea of an app tracking their movements around the building. And a vocal minority, well, in fact, a vocal majority, really, they want to know about the privacy implications of this app. What exactly is it recording, and how is the tracking data being used? What's being grabbed from the phone, and where does the data go? It doesn't help your situation much that when they come to install the app on their own phones, they're seeing messages telling them that the app, messages from the OS telling them the app needs access to their location, which kind of makes some sense, but also the microphone and their contacts. They don't really understand why that is. And you understand these employees' concerns. You're kind of with them on this. So you contact the suppliers of the BIS, Building Information System, to find out where you can get some information about this. And they seem surprised by your request. And after some delay, they email you a PDF. And that presents a kind of very generic privacy policy. It doesn't really kind of answer the questions which you and your staff have got, specifically about how the BIS is using the data. So you express your dissatisfaction, and they reluctantly agree to meet. Remember, they've had to implement this thing on a very tight budget, so they're kind of a bit cagey about spending a lot more money on it. Meanwhile, HR in your council, they've kind of further fueled the fire of this situation. They've issued some new guidance in the online staff handbook explaining that complying with the new arrangements is a condition of employment to which all staff are now signed up. And they've linked to a copy of the privacy policy. And this isn't really what you'd agreed with HR, so it's not going too well. And whilst you're waiting to meet with the supplier and getting on with all your other council building management duties, of which there are many, something crops up. You come in on a Monday morning to an email from an employee gleefully letting you know that they've repeatedly recorded their presence outside their office over the weekend. You should check it out. And you know that this isn't possible because there's no actual physical access to the building. You know they can't have got there. So you do check it out. Now, if it is possible to see where that employee has been in the building within this system, you don't know how to do that. But what you can do is you can pull up some graphs of usage of data of parts of the building. So you can see which parts of the buildings have been used. And sure enough, there, along the kind of flat line over that weekend, there's a spike exactly where the employee's corridor is. Now, once again, thanks to the magic of storytelling, we can explain what's happened here. The employee has cloned the beacon in their corridor, and right now, that's not a particularly hard thing to do. So they've cloned the beacon, they've got enough data, they've created their own beacon. They've got close enough for the building to get some corporate Wi-Fi, and then they've just literally kind of repeatedly exposed this beacon to the app and logged up their presence. So it's not the most sophisticated hack in the world, but it's done the job. And as a building manager, you haven't really got an in-depth understanding of beacons and beacon security, but this employee's direct action is kind of enough for you to lose the remaining faith you've got in the supplier. So you're going to take some direct action of your own. So you instruct HR to let everyone know that the tracking element of the BIS is being suspended. You get up from your desk, out of your office, and you walk around and start tearing the beacons from the walls and contact the supplier and start really ranting at them. So Obviously, we've got a bunch of stories there. The smoke detector story is obviously an incredibly thinly veiled issue that occurred with Nest, the Nest smoke detector. Now, if you look around at Nest now and find out about it, you'll see that those problems have all been cleared up. As far as I know, the hand-waving to silence it thing, they withdrew that fairly quickly, and they never put it back on. I don't think they've put it back on to this day. It was a very bumpy launch for Nest, though, and there were a lot of issues around false alarms and things. So that bumpy launch and the fact there's a bumpy launch around a kind of safety product was what made it an interesting story for me. The DVR story is also a true story. So I'm not good enough with Photoshop to mock up a BBC News story. So that's another true one. And the kind of Eco House one and the council one, that I've completely made those up. But I hope that you'll agree that from kind of where we are today, they seem like plausible stories. So what I'm trying to kind of talk about here is that how our responsibilities as designers, so people who we've kind of grown up developing websites and apps, we're kind of getting into developing products and systems and services, and our responsibilities as we've got into those things, they've really grown. And if you're like me, they've kind of grown quite stealthily, but quite steadily. And I think that as we start getting involved in more physical products and more connected things and interconnected products, those responsibilities are going to continue to grow, and I think they're going to continue to grow at an accelerated pace. So at the same time, fairly kind of over the past few years, we've been getting into lean, we've been getting into agile, whether that's with big A or a small a, we've been getting into minimum viable product. So we're used to being able to release early, to release often, to fix problems with our stuff, with rapid deployment and continuous integration. We can push a script to our web server, we can release an update to our app. But obviously physical products is a very different story. They've got a much longer lead time to build, to develop and design and manufacture and distribute a physical product. So we can't easily go out and fix those things. If there's a problem with a physical product, you might well be looking at a recall or potentially physically going and fixing that thing. So we have to think very differently as we get sucked into those things. Now, hopefully most of us have got our heads around the idea that UX, so we're talking about user experience, is so much more than things like information architecture and user interfaces. It's basically any interaction which our users have with our things. I'm just going to talk about things now because it's a bit easier. Any interaction which users have with our things really influence their experience of that thing. So that could include all sorts of things. It could include their interaction with the organization itself and the way the organization markets and sells things, certainly with the way it supports things, with things like user guides and publication, with packaging, the descriptions of things on app stores, with people who deliver the thing or install the thing, things like social media accounts, other different points of contact with our organizations. And it probably includes things that we would perceive as well outside of our control. So other things that our thing integrates with or interacts with or posts to. Maybe even the shops that people buy things from, the online stores, the channels through which people purchase and download our thing and even learn about the existence of our thing. And it certainly also includes the data which our things collect. And they collect, they store, they share, they sell, and how we communicate that to our users. And we can't really get away with a straight terms and conditions and a privacy policy kind of gateway to things anymore. Our users are starting to demand much more and understand their data much better. So in the past, I understand it's quite important to get a Venn diagram in presentations. In the past, we might have been reluctant to get involved with some of these things. We might have advised our clients, for example, that they should be writing the terms and conditions, maybe in consultation with their own lawyers. UX folk might have in the past thought that, for example, the way an app deals with the lack of an internet connection is kind of a development issue. But we can't really keep thinking this way. So everyone, our developers, have to be thinking UX, and our UXers have to be understanding enough of the technical stuff to understand how the user experience and how the technology affects the user experience. So the team have got to work together to work out where all the kind of touch points are. Think about where all these potential problems are and how we're going to deal with them. So let's just take a look at some of the things that we've seen in the examples. So things might have been designed in ways that we didn't really appreciate because we didn't perhaps have experience or backstory or knowledge of these things. It might be a field that we're not used to working with. In terms of the lifetime of physical products, so people are used to things lasting a long time. We're used to a washing machine lasting several years, probably more. And so people expect right now physical products to last a long time. And they might adapt our physical products and do things with them in ways that we don't really expect. So the kind of relationship that people have with physical products and the things that integrate with them is very different. The way that we communicate problems, the way people learn about problems with our things is very important. So if your product makes it into the mainstream media because there's something not right, because it's been recalled, because there's a problem, then it's probably a good sign. It probably means you're doing really well with your product. But it's also a bad sign because it means you're not really communicating with your users in the right way. In terms of customer support, people have to contact customer support. Some people do it straight away. They don't even want to get into solving problems. They just want to get in and have somebody solve their problem. Other people will spend a long time trying to solve their own problems. And they'll spend time Googling and researching and experimenting. And they're only going to contact customer support when they reach the end. Now, those two people need very different things. So coming up with customer support that's going to help both of them is difficult. And you're going to have to think very carefully about that. Documentation is really important. How are we going to provide things in ways that people are going to be able to access for years to come? If our products are going to last years, then probably the documentation is going to need to last years. So they're not going to write stuff down. They're probably going to lose anything that you give to them. If you're building a system that integrates third-party components or uses third-party things, you're going to need to consider how you document or share the documentation around those things. People's safety is really, really important. And people's safety at night when they're asleep is really, really, really important. And if you're going to wake people up in the night to tell them that their safety is at risk, you really have to be sure that there is a genuine problem. So that kind of safety adds a whole element of extra thinking that we need. Now, security. Right now, kind of hackers and the media are having quite a lot of fun with Internet of Things, and there's a lot of kind of setup stories to kind of prove that Internet of Things can be hacked. So we've seen stories that are mostly set up, people driving internet-connected cars off the road. There's stuff about baby monitors. There's things about the internet-connected sniper rifle and changing the trajectory of that. So a lot of those are kind of false setup stories. Some of them are genuine, but they're stories that are making it into the mainstream media, and there's a lot of excitement around that as far as the media is concerned, and that's leading potentially to fear to our users. So those stories aren't going to go away. Now, I just wanted to point out the council, the kind of beacon story, that was partly inspired by an email which came to us at Function just a few days ago from Contact, the people that make beacons, and we're beacon owners. That email came through telling us that our beacons are insecure, they can be hacked. So that's kind of what inspired that story. Now, and I think these stories aren't going to go away, and people are going to fear things. And I think as the stories come around kind of safety-critical things, we're potentially going to see regulation arriving around these things. That's going to be something we're going to have to deal with more and more. People's privacy is really important, the privacy around their data. And some people are going to be blasé about the collection of data, either because they just don't care, or they don't really realize the implications of the collection of data. Some other people are going to be really kind of vocally aggressive about their data and what you're doing with it. And then there's probably a big kind of central ground of people who probably really want to take the time to understand what's happening with their data. They actually want to realize what's going on. And I think that as we're moving to a place where every connected thing could be collecting more and more data, even if it isn't, even if it's kind of anonymized data, I think people are going to be thinking about this more and more. It's going to become more and more of an issue. So I'm just going to finish up with kind of a bunch of easy learnings, hopefully, which kind of pulls together some of the stuff from the stories there. So I think all of us need to get our heads around our responsibilities and risks across the board for our things. And we've got to do that together with our clients. We've got to help our clients understand those things as well. The user experience and everything that contributes to it, it has to become everyone's responsibility. So we can't be in a situation where UX are saying this is a dev responsibility and dev can't be saying this is a UX responsibility. We've all got to work together to kind of surface and deal with these problems. And project managers and product managers are going to have to work hard to uncover and surface all of these responsibilities, work with the client. I think we probably need to slow down a bit. And I guess to give that a bit more detail, I think we need to find a bit of a balance between MVP and whatever the opposite of MVP is. So we can still do MVP for some things. We can still release software and things very quickly. But for the physical stuff, we're going to have to think much more carefully. We've got longer lead times. We're going to have to be much more careful that we're getting things right because we can't go out and fix those things. We're going to have to start getting our heads around some extra design disciplines, and this has kind of cropped up throughout the day today, actually. And so things like service design, product design, systems thinking, so kind of thinking about systems as a whole. And I don't mean to belittle the craft of product design, so I understand that it takes years to learn and master the art of product design. But what I am saying is that all of us can learn enough to kind of have a good understanding of it, to know whether we need to get help in for product design. So we've got to kind of get our heads around some of these new things. We're definitely going to have to go beyond basic usability testing. We can't test these things kind of in a 15, 20-minute, half-hour test with users sat in a lab or in front of a laptop. We're going to have to go back to looking at extended beta tests and field trials. So we're going to have to recruit our testers and work with them over an extended period of time. We need to have a think about getting those testers to test some of the things we're concerned about, integrating the stuff that we're working with into their lives and into the things that they're already using. And then we're going to have to get them to document that process, so get them to complete diaries, go in and visit them, observe them doing the stuff. So we're looking at extending this kind of testing process. And if we're working on safety-critical systems, then we need to think about conducting these tests with a fallback, with kind of trusted systems that we know are already in place. Customer support is really hard. So if your product needs customer support, and I'm going to suggest that that's probably the majority, you're going to have to get your head around customer support, and that might mean, again, bringing somebody in who understands customer support really well. So you're going to have to think about setting up the channels that you're going to need. Think about what you're going to need in terms of whether it's email, whether it's live chat, whether it's telephone, face-to-face support. You might need to be sending out support engineers for physical things. So you've got to get to grips with this stuff. You've got to work with your clients who may already have support channels. And it's not a simple case of, here's your new product, you're going to have to come up with a new support thing. They might need to redesign those support channels to match the user experience of the thing that you're making. Security is not something we can sacrifice for user experience. We can't improve our user experience by taking away security features. It is a crucial part of the user experience, and that is going to come up. So you have to get your heads around security or find people that can do that for you. And on that, we have to think about how we're going to update our things. Security patches. How are users going to update their things? Can we push things to them? How are they going to do things if the thing, how are they going to do these updates if the things haven't got a screen, if they haven't got physical controls? Are things going to update themselves? Are users going to be aware of it? Is it just going to kind of happen? How do they find out what version they've got? That kind of thing. I think we should expect these stories around safety and security to probably bring regulation, particularly around safety-critical things. Now, developers of embedded software have been kind of dealing with this kind of regulation for years and years, and we're going to have to do the same. And even if this doesn't happen, if we don't get this kind of regulation, we should consider our kind of moral duty to uphold safety and security, and that's something that we're going to have to look out for. Kind of get out of the mindset of saying, I don't do this, this isn't really our thing. You're going to have to start to do some of these things. So you're going to have to learn enough to be able to help, to understand, to take action, to help your clients understand these things. Business models are really important, and they're going to underpin many aspects of things which form part of our user experience. So if we think about things like support, that's very important that our business models are going to support providing that level of support that's required. Might need to think about users changing the level of purchase that they have on a thing, changing the subscription levels. We've got to work together with our clients and make our things work with their business models. And we may even need to work with our clients to design those business models, to change them, to produce the user experience that we want. You and your team, along with your clients, you are going to face some of these responsibilities. That's a given. So don't be afraid of them. But really don't dodge them. You're going to have to work together to solve them. So that's really what I'm getting across today. So kind of in summary, what I'm trying to say is that if we spend a long time, we've spent a long time on the user research of a thing, we've crafted a beautiful user interface, a lovely unboxing experience, but then we haven't thought through the process of, say, for example, the user changing the level of subscription on our product, then really we're no better than the people who kind of didn't take the time to work out how I was going to set this swing into the ground and give the user experience that we see there, that's a pretty good user experience. So I did this talk first kind of around a year ago, and since I first did it, that book has come out. Now, I realize this talk isn't incredibly practical, but that book is incredibly practical, and I totally recommend it. It's really good. It explores lots of technical things that impact the UX of Internet of Things. This is kind of like a yin and yang. The other thing that inspired a lot of this talk is a lot of the parody stuff around Internet of Things. There are some great Twitter accounts that kind of explore either genuine Internet of Things products, which just seem absurd, or exploring some crazy situations that we think might happen. So, yeah, I recommend you check those out because, for me, that's been really inspirational and made me think. And the other thing is that I'm kind of coming to the end of this talk, and I'm probably going to put it to bed generally now. But what I am going to keep doing is collecting things that I find about UX and specifically the kind of UX of Internet of Things. So I'm going to keep putting things into this pinboard. If you've got stuff, let me know. Give me a shout. I'd love to add some things that you find. I can't stick around today, unfortunately. But I'd love if you want to chat to me about it, give me a shout on Twitter or whatever, and we'll chat and we'll share some material. And that's it. Thank you very much.